going to have a divided Congress. The Democrats will control the Senate. The Republicans will control the House. We've seen what that looks like. We've run this movie before. It wasn't pretty. And we've got these really big problems to wrestle with. Why should anyone feel confident that we're going to do it better in the next year than we did it in the last 2 years?
Well, first of all, I think the dynamics may change. Much of the opposition to a newly elected president is opposition based on trying to make sure he isn't reelected. President Obama is reelected. He's not going to run for a second term. That actually, I think, gives him a much more negotiating leverage in a politically divided Congress. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I have heard, as I'm sure you have heard, that during this period of time, there has been movement within the Senate, a bipartisan movement, to try to forge at least the beginnings of a long-run deficit reduction package. Third, I think the continued warnings of the Congressional Budget Office, the Federal Reserve, independent forecasters, that it's highly dangerous to go off the fiscal cliff, that message is being heard. So I think for all of those reasons, yes, it's going to be very complicated, but I think the situation, the environment, the dynamics will have improved.
What does the president need to do differently this time than he did in his first term?
Well, I think that I go back to the days of President Clinton. As you know, I served as his economic advisor, and I recall very much after the midterm election when he lost, people forget there was never a deal that he reached with Republican Congress. In fact, there was the Republican shutdown, and that first term ended in a great deal of division and rancor. The second term, though, a lot of work had in fact gone on in the negotiations, which had finally failed, to lay the framework of a deal that brought people together. So I think that the same kind of process, though it's not very transparent, has been going on. There was almost a deal reached between President Obama and John Boehner. It didn't. It finally fell apart. But I think that the remnants of that deal and the stuff that's in the Simpson-Bowles Commission that the president has, that the president established, and the president has embraced many of those policies. Those are the framework. They provide the framework for a deal. So yes, it's going to be very tough. It's going to be quite bitter. It may take some time. The key challenge is to find a way to avoid going over the fiscal cliff, to provide time to really make the long-run deal. Because what's important here is the long-run deal. We don't need fiscal austerity right now. We need a long-run deal.
So, Laura, we are, of course, the Wall Street Journal. We're keeping an eye on the markets, and what you're seeing in Dow Jones futures is a significant decline since word that the president has been reelected to a second term. What would you make of that?
You know, I don't know the history of how the Dow Jones responds to these kinds of situations. One interpretation is that the most likely room for a deal to avoid the fiscal cliff might include going back to the taxes on dividends and capital gains that existed under President Clinton. Those would be increases from the very low rates we have right now. Any increase in the capital gains tax rate does engender the immediate response of making adjustments in one's portfolio that could affect stock price futures.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Laura Tyson, and thanks for being with us at this late hour.